And that voice is still shaking me every time we start these recordings. It's been 3 weeks. But hey, welcome to this week's episode of the Cam and Otis Show. Otis is not able to join us this week, unfortunately. So my new co-host for just a week, don't worry, is the wonderful Ashi Matal. She's stepping in for Otis. Thank you for joining us, Ashi.
Well, thank you for having me.
And in continuation of our theme for June of perseverance, I thought it would be a great idea to have the lovely Dr. Batterton, aka my older sister, Ciarra McGregor, on to talk about perseverance. She's a physical therapist in Denver, and I thought you could provide a really interesting perspective into the healing process and how big of a role perseverance plays into that. So thank you for joining us, Ciarra.
Yeah, my pleasure. Happy to be here.
Great. Well, I'll just get us rolling right off the bat with it. How much of a role does positivity and like a positive outlook play in a recovery process when it comes to injuries that you're dealing with for folks?
Positivity is huge when you're going through a rehabilitation situation. Most people they think that they're going to be the exception to the rule, and that doctors tell them it's going to take 12 weeks to recover, 6 months to recover, and they're hearing it in their head, I'm going to be 6 weeks, I'm going to be the person that cuts that in half. Mm-hmm. But unfortunately, the fact of the matter is, physiologically, sometimes these things just take time. So there's an aspect of mental, perseverance there, of like, because we have to be positive and encourage them, because they're going to start feeling down. People start to get thinking, this is how I'm going to always be. This is never going to get better, because they think that they're the exception to the rule, and they think that they'll get better faster than everyone else. Mm-hmm. And so when we start hitting those milestones and they aren't, where they think they should be, it's really important to keep them positive, but also just really based in the facts that, this will improve. You need to take your time. It's going to get there. People come in, it can be kind of a hard thing to deal with, that you see people at their worst all the time. And so we're constantly having to be the encourager and trying to remind them to see the goal, like that, the light at the end of the tunnel, that you will get there. Constant reminders to be positive.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting thing you mentioned there, that you see people kind of at their worst a lot of the time, because that's something I had never thought about your work, that when people are coming in, it's people who are in a lot of pain, they're frustrated with their situation, and then you're going to, frankly, beat the crap out of them for a couple hours maybe. And, we know it's all in good faith, but I've had a lot of physical therapy, and y'all beat up on people a little bit because they need it. But how does that play into your perspective of the work, like bringing that positive attitude to people who are kind of in the more negative side of things?
So, I do think that sometimes it's fun to see the change when they finally do start to come around and be a little bit more positive, because they can do something that they couldn't do before. But a lot of times we have to be the person that points those things out to them. So, you have someone who comes in on crutches, and maybe they, couldn't go up and down the stairs before, and they start to do it without really realizing it, that they're doing it. And we have to be the person that's like, no, look what you can do now. Like, see how much better you are. See how far you've come. You are getting better. You will continue to get better. But sometimes, people are so bogged down by the negative aspects that they need that input from a different source to say, no, look what you can do. And, some of that stuff is, stairs are big. Sometimes it's like, look, you can straighten your knee all the way. And like, I have to be the person that makes that a big deal, right? Because it is. But to them, it's like, gosh, whatever, guess I did that. Mm-hmm. So we have to make it positive, and I won't lie, there's certain people that when I see their name on my schedule, I'm like, okay, time to be the cheerleader. Like, got to mentally prepare myself that the whole session is going to be a slog of like me trying to convince them that they'll get there. But it does, mostly it makes me a more positive person, because I get to see that change. Very rarely, there are the few exceptions to things, but most people get better. And that's the best part of my job.
Oh, go ahead, Ashi.
It's so funny, because here we have, a doctor of, physical help, like the physiological side, the medical side. Now, I'm a doctor of business health and organizational health, and being a bottom line coach amongst other things. And it's just really funny because there's just definitely a lot of points that correlate, right? Like, being the cheerleader and having those conversations and providing the clarity, because human beings, on one hand, they absolutely love uncertainty in the pits and the depths of their souls, but they really do reject it. And coming from the standpoint of organizational health, or even being an executive leader, or somebody who is leading on the front lines all the way up to, you're the number one guy or girl. And it goes back to the concept of that mentality, right? We talk about the scarcity mentality, the fear mentality, Camden, right? I mean, every single day we talk to people in that space, and we're talking about shifting that mental state to the point of being abundant, right? I always tell people, hey, look, you have to imagine yourself where you want to be. If you're just imagining yourself making $2,000 a month versus perhaps making $200,000 a month, where is that going to lead you? You have to give yourself that clarity. And I don't think people give themselves enough time to really slow that roll, right? Like, we're on this amazing path with momentum, and it's that snowball effect. We never really talk about saying, hey, slow down for a second, slow your roll. Let's, talk about, is this going the way you want? Do you need to course correct? And if you do, how do we redirect that river or that momentum to where it needs to be and going those channels? And it takes a great deal of grit and tenacity. And we've talked about this, Camden. We talked about this on our Wednesday live. We talked about this on our Friday lives, our experiments with Otis not being here. Otis, we love you. Come back soon. But we talk about what kind of person and what kind of character traits it takes, and to really just yank it out of you. I mean, that's what I see you doing, good doctor. Like, I see you having to yank out what's already there and shift that mental paradigm. And that is the most difficult thing to do. I mean, in coaching, in creating progress, in creating growth, whether it's mental, physical, ecumenical, spiritual, or holistically, shifting that paradigm is always the most difficult. But it starts with yourself, guys, and you can do this. I promise you. If I can do it, anybody can do it. I guarantee you. The ups and downs. And it doesn't mean that you're a person who loves the roller coaster, the person who only loves the merry-go-round. It's all of the above. How do you handle environmental change? And what is perseverance to you? I mean, I'm going to go around the table here, guys, because we have the time and it's so much fun. Camden, what does perseverance mean to you? And how do you persevere? What do you do when you've got to dig in deep? What works for you?
Well, I'm trying not to use the tribe and purpose definition that I've been using for 2 weeks on this. I'm trying to come up with my own on the fly. But I would say it's, because I keep coming back to that one, maintain a purpose in spite of difficulties. But I think what it comes down to is the mindfulness aspect of it. And this actually kind of sets up to what I was going to say anyway. It's about being fully aware of your situation and focusing on where you want to be, and not letting negative aspects overweigh the positive aspects. It specifically kind of go back to one of your examples, CP. I'll use Ciarra. CP probably doesn't come out great into the podcast. It's a little too short. But that's her nickname, folks. But when you're talking about like the little benchmarks, what came to mind for me was my own injuries and going through of how devastating it is to lose those things. And then how you don't give a crap when they come back. It's such a weird thing. Like
Yes.
I couldn't freaking walk. And then I was in there barely walking around. I wasn't happy about it. I was pissed I wasn't running. And you have this kind of warped perspective on it. But it comes back to you got to be mindful of the pros and the cons, the positives and the negatives that are happening in there. And then I think the way that you're able to persevere through those tough times is by focusing on the positive outcome. If it's a tough time in your business, it's focusing on how big the business will be, or how happy you'll be when things are taking off, or how much you enjoy the work, those type of positive things. For the injury, what comes to mind for me is I was always thinking about coaching rugby again. And, credit to my physical therapist, they would always talk to me about it, whether they were just filling time or they knew that it would get me excited, and they could tell was every time I was in there and they were, when I got my freaking sciatica surgery, I could barely move my leg at all. And they're working on those exercises. I'm in so much pain. They're like, oh my gosh. So when's the next time you're going out with the kids? When does the season start? We're going to get you ready to get out there with the kids again. And that type of positivity of having that great image to work towards is what allowed me to be able to persevere through things. So I think having, a plan to get to that point is good, but just having the image of what you want to get out of it in the long run, I think is the easiest way to persevere, or the best way. I think I answered you eventually on that one, Ashi.
No, that's great. But I'm going to chime in and use her nickname now that he's opened that door, folks. So CB, what do you do?
Oh, CP. So
CP.
I got to explain. So it's
Explain that
Ciarra.
one.
She's Ciarra Page, but now there's Ciarra Batterton, so I could see how you got the CB.
See, I would call her CPB, but then it's like not a nickname; it doesn't flow. So I don't know. Okay, fine. We'll call her CP today. So the good doctor is CP. Like, what do you do?
So I mean, I loved Camden. I love that definition of perseverance. To me, it is, I mean, just as simple as can be. It's, just sticking to it to get to the goal, right? We are extremely goal-based in physical therapy. So we have to, it's not, we want the patient to have their goals. So that's really helpful to show them that they've improved and to have that thing to focus on at the end of the tunnel. But then we write our own goals as far as small, like objective things. Honestly, that's how you get insurance coverage. So, goals are huge in my industry. When you come into a physical therapy appointment, we always ask, your PT should always ask, what is your goal? Why are you here? Right? Because you don't care that your hip flexor is now full strength. That doesn't matter to you, right? You care that you're back coaching the kids. You care that you're back on the golf course. You care that you can drive for an hour without your leg falling asleep. Yeah. Those are the things that make it meaningful to you. And I think that having meaning is important when we're talking in perseverance, because why would you ever stick with something if it doesn't mean anything to you? Right? So those personalized things, you have to have that passion and that drive to get there, to persevere through it, to see that goal. So it has to be meaningful to you and to the person, in my instance, the patient, or else there's really no buy-in, right? That why would they do that? And I think that applies in all industries, that, you could tell them that you think that their company could be worth this much money, but is that exactly what they're wanting for their company? Like, it has to be personalized to the person, the client, or else why would you ever persevere?
Yeah, I think that's really true, that you have to have a personal connection to your goals, because you have to be bought into them in order to get excited about it. And that's excitement is what's going to fuel your perseverance throughout your journey.
I mean, I'm also going to say something here, because I come at it from a little bit of a different perspective. I mean, I see that as, in a way, putting the horse before the cart, right? When regards to, we're just getting the horse out of the barn. I mean, we talk a lot about flow state. We talk about creativity. We talk about joy, and when I sit here and I talk to clients and organizations around the world, we talk about, especially when it's one-on-one, when it's just that high-end performer or that leader, and we're having this conversation, you say, look, we talk about goals. We talk about what's meaningful to you. We talk about all these amazing things and big vision, how it trickles down, reverse engineering. But let's take even a step further than that. Like, let's take a even bigger step back and go to the most basic of concepts here: joy and love, right? The concept of being joyous leads and opens you up to love. And in terms of creativity, in terms of being innovative, I mean, a lot of people like to use the word, well, I'm innovative and I ideate. And when you're sitting around the real innovators, the real ideators, I mean, it's just kapow, like fireworks. We're like, what in the world did you come up with that concept? Like undimensional and the rainbow cannon and all these other so wonderful things you'll hear me say about this quantum dynamic impact. And quite frankly, when you're not in that joyous state, you're not in that flow state, you're not in that creative space. So how do you get that point where you are in that joyous state, where you are in that creative space, where you are in that space where you can actually decide what is meaningful to you, right? How do we get them out of the state of fear and anxiety and, I always say this, and Kim, you've heard me say it again and again. I will say it again today, that self-esteem and self-confidence are not easily given by others.
Mhm.
It's something you have to believe in yourself. What is it that you like about yourself? What is it that you love about yourself? I mean, even in the state of, or in the conversation of this dynamic involving physical therapy, I
Mhm.
like how you take it out of these cold, crazy terms that mean something to you, but also putting it back into the paradigm of what it means to your patient. Like, and for me, I
Mhm.
do the same thing. Is this the end all be all? Why are
Mhm.
you doing this? What is your purpose? What's the intention here? So keeping that up. And I always have to say, and this is me being the realistic, pragmatic person, you're not always going to be hippy dippy. I love puppies and I'm going to go hug sunshine. You're going to have those moments, guys, where it's going to be like, this is just nuts. Like, what am I doing? I feel
Mhm.
like giving up today. I need someone to tell me it's going to be okay. This is me not mocking you. I promise you. It will be okay. Everything will be all right. And don't push those emotions away, guys. Accept
Mhm.
them, process them, deal with them. Because I promise you, if you don't, they're going to gain another head. It's going to be like fighting a freaking Hydra, and
Mhm.
you won't know what to do. So stop cutting the heads off, go for the body, but face it,
You know,
face it head
oh,
on.
I was gonna say I was reading a Seneca quote the other day talking about how emotions are like rivers, that they're easier to cross at the beginning, and I loved that one right there. That it's, if something bad comes up and it's bugging you, the longer you let it bug you, the bigger it's gonna get, and the harder that river will be to cross. But what I think you're getting at a lot, Ashi, to try to bring Otis's perspective in on this is he talks about a lot about the energy levels. He talks about this all the time. And what you're talking about there is being at that, I think there's only 5 energy levels. I hope I got it right. But that fifth energy level where you're at this really, this view of abundance where you have all of this energy, and everywhere you see, there's opportunity. You can connect all of the dots without even trying. And that state of positivity. And I think that's a great place to be. And it's very productive. But to your point, you're not always going to be there. And I think that the way that you get up to that energy level is, one, really through perseverance, but I think there's a lot of individual mechanics that you can use to help you boost your energy level. I think that, and the reason I say that is because this is one of those things, I think lots of different things work for lots of different people as far as how to increase that energy. But the way that you apply what we're saying here is that you have to look at yourself honestly and see what boosts your energy, what pulls your energy down. And for me, I write those down, and then I have a little cheat sheet that I can always use of like, hey, okay, you're having a bad day. All right, what can I do? It's like, okay, I can go hug my dog. That'll work, or okay, that didn't quite work. All right, I'm gonna go work out. That'll work. And you have this list of things that are giving you a little bit of that positivity to get you started. And because a lot of the time you just need that little bit of a boost to then start moving, and you can get up to that next energy level on that. And then to kind of flip it back over to you, Dr. Batterton. But sorry, I keep wanting to say CP, but I feel like that just blurs too much because I say it too fast. But how do you, so we've talked about painting the picture. How do you get the positivity on the smaller scale of things, like where it's the, not just the painting the picture at the end and saying, hey, we're almost there, but the, going through the exercises themselves and kind of the more grueling times like that? Is that something where you're able to help get people to boost their energy a bit so that they can have a better recovery? Because like you said earlier, that the positivity does play a big role into it. If you don't want to come to PT, that means you're probably not doing the workouts at home.
Yes. So, I mean, kind of going back to what I said earlier, a lot of it is
Mhm.
is celebrating those small moments. We when I go to talk about those goals, so in physical therapy, we also set short-term goals.
Mhm.
And I don't, I'm sure you guys utilize that stuff too. But like you were saying earlier, Ashi, yes, there is the big dream and whatever, and that may be putting the horse in front of the cart. But we establish how we're going to get there, and
Mhm.
that allows you to celebrate those moments. If you set those goals up from the beginning, then you have the opportunity to show growth. So if we didn't ever check in, then it's easy for them to get lost in the process and think that they're never going to improve. But we set those goals that this is how you should look in 2 weeks. This is how you should look in 4 weeks. This is what we're going to work towards in the interim, because in order to do that thing that you really want to do, these are the steps you have to take. And I think that setting that out from the beginning and those expectations for people, gives me the opportunity to celebrate those moments with them and to show that they're improving, but it also gives them small things to work towards when the big goal seems impossible. And that's really important.
One thought on that is, does the planning aspect, does that play in much for the patients themselves, or is that kind of like an internal use type thing? Because obviously I can see where the goals play in for them. That makes total sense. But like, are you laying out the full plan? Like, hey, in 2 weeks, this is where you're going to be.
Yeah, it really depends on the person. Some people like knowing all of that stuff, and they want to know from the beginning exactly how it's going to play out. And other people, they don't want to worry about it. They just want to do what they're told and trust the process without much input. So it really depends on the person. I do always try to, if we're specifically talking something that has kind of a set protocol or time frame that most people follow, I do always try to lay that out for people in the beginning and then see, where they fall on that spectrum of how much they want to know of like exactly what they're going to do. And so I think that just like anything, it's really, really individualized. But on our side, we're going to do that for every person internally, but yeah, not necessarily every person wants to know that. I wanted to say something too about what you were talking about with the energy and how you handle stuff like working out or the dog or whatever. Something that we'll sometimes have to encourage people to do is actually to take time off. Take a second, take a day, and just don't do your exercises. Like, that sounds counterintuitive, but
right.
Sometimes, they're so focused on that goal that they're really not giving their bodies time to recover. And I think that that's important mentally as well, that, you get so focused and you bogged down that you can't, you may not even realize how negative you're being, but you're not letting yourself enjoy anything else. And so I think, sometimes it's important to let people know that, it's okay to take an easier day and let your body recover, let your mind recover, do something that you're going to, will make you happier, because you're going to be more successful when you come back to it, because you aren't now, totally bogged down by it, brought down to that level of like all the little bad things that you can't do. And you can get a second of like, a break and refreshment.
I love that. I love how you're taking like the holistic view of it. It's not just the joint you're working on. It's not just the bum knee that you're fixing. It's the whole person that's there. And I think that's a really important thing. When you talk about problem solving in general, it's like you got to understand all of the variables that you're playing with if you're going to accurately solve a problem. And if you aren't letting them take their time off, or if you're not thinking about the person themselves, you're just thinking about the knee, then you're not going to be able to understand all of the things going on in that situation.
Totally.
Agreed. I mean, that is the approach. And I've seen, oh my goodness, individuals in my line of work, awesome power, absolutely the most dangerous people on the planet, right? Because they have the ability to undo all of the work and lead people in the wrong direction. I hate saying this, but COVID, oh gosh, when COVID hit, everybody turned around and had a license to practice, with this coaching stuff. And I'm thinking, what are you all doing? Okay, so let me know how that works out. And I think they once again get focused on the isolation, right? And you hear me use that term a lot, like the holistic approach, right? Everything from the emotional to the spiritual to the physical to the mental, right? It all plays a part. But I also want to say that when we're dealing with this, it's that once again, you're not alone. You've got to have support. All right. We always say, it's lonely at the top. And I say it's lonely on that journey until you find your tribe, until you find people. I mean, you sit there and you're hearing people say it'll be fine. And they're the people who've gone through it. So they know what's going on, what's happening. And you're just thinking, okay, well, I'm trying. I'm sitting here, I'm going through this, I'm working on it. And then when you finally get there, and I love what you said earlier, Camden, about how when it, for me, I put it in such a way as when it hits, it hits. It flows. Not everything is supposed to be so difficult. So if there's friction, if everything is a debate or an argument, obviously come on back. And I will say, look, you're going to see ghosts if you're looking for ghosts. Now, you'll see patterns and establish MOs if that's what you want to look for. So what are you wanting to look for? It's not just about intention, and I will say this again and again and again, as somebody who believes in making progress in those solutions, it's about outcome. Your intention will help drive that boat, but you've got to lock in the GPS, right? Know where you're going.
One question actually just came to mind, Ciarra, I wanted to throw out, and I understand this will vary person by person, but kind of in a more generic type sense. So do you think that being around other patients at the clinic is a pro or a con for a person's mentality coming into it? Like, is it like seeing the person that's in worse shape makes me feel better, seeing the person that's almost done makes me feel better, or is that like a negative thing? What do you think on that? I know it's a little bit of a hypothetical.
No, I mean, that is my day-to-day life. There are certain people that I do not think benefit from it. Because it's all about how you perceive things, right? So there's people that will see that person who also had an ACL repair and think like, oh, I'm going to be doing that. I'm going to get there. And then there's the person who's like, how far out are you? And, oh, well, I'm only a week behind. Why can't I do that?
I want to do those exercises.
Yes. And they actually, instead of using it as a positive thing, will use it as a negative thing of like, well, should I be doing that now? Like, am I behind? And then they just spiral from that. I do think in general, it's a positive environment because you have a lot of people that are wanting to get better, but there's those few people that see the others that are doing well. And instead of, celebrating them and seeing that as something they want to be, they use it as a negative on themselves, which happens in all of life, right? But I do think in general it's positive because even, you may have someone with like a rotator cuff repair talking to someone who had a knee replacement and they can complain about how neither of them can sleep. And they like that there's someone who understands what they're going through a little bit versus their spouse who's tired of hearing about it, but there are the people that, or maybe you have two people that have had kind of a struggle and they're talking about it, but then the third person hears that and they start thinking, oh no, is that gonna happen to me? So, I think there's good and there's bad. I think overall it's a good thing, but there's certain people that we try to keep from maybe like not sitting them next to that other person that's dealing with something too, so that they don't spiral from there. But, it's support groups have, they make some people feel good and they make other people feel bad. And there's some research, unfortunately, it shows that they make a lot of people feel bad. And so I think we just kind of fall into that same category sometimes.
So when you open your own practice, you're going to have two separate buildings, one of them with big dividers and everything. So for the people that you got to keep away from everyone else.
Yeah. Put a little sticker on their chart. Like around them only by really positive people.
Exactly. I think one of the things you touched on there that's really interesting though is how when you look at somebody else on their journey, how you can start comparing yourself to them and the kind of problems there. But then I think the really interesting aspect there is people get to this like, why not me? Why can't I do that? And there's what I think is the perspective switch on that is more so if they can, I can. And trusting your own process along the way. But it's like, look, if they are doing that, it's not because they're special and I'm not. It's because they put in the hard work and I can do the same thing. And I think that's a really important perspective switch to have.
Yes, I 100% agree. And one thing I didn't touch on that you had mentioned was seeing people that are worse off than you. So I will have people that come in and they're like, oh, I can't believe I'm complaining about my shoulder when that guy can't walk, and there is that can be a good thing in a way, because it, helps you have perspective of like this, I can get through this, I can get better. But then also I always remind people that they're on their own journey. No one can tell you how you feel, no one should minimize your feelings. So it's a balance there of, yes, there's people that are worse off than you, but that doesn't mean that what you're going through isn't hard.
Right. I think that, yeah, gosh, that's deep. There's a lot there on that one. Because I think that's something that you hear a lot with, and I think, I'm not sure proliferation is the right word, more, maybe more so a increased awareness of, mental illnesses and things all the time. That's been happening a lot. And I think that's something that a lot of people go through with it is, it's the people have it so much worse, so I don't actually have it type of thing, where it's like, no, you can still have something going on that you need to deal with. You don't need to just be comparing it to other people. Focus on yourself and what it really means, not on comparing it to other people. And because then when you get down that path, whether it's an injury or mental health thing, you're gonna continue to spiral because you're not going to treat it because you're thinking it's not that bad, and that's just a terrible route you don't want to go down. One interesting thing I kind of want to throw out that it's something I say a lot, and I think you'll agree with the first aspect of it, which is pain is relative. And I how does that play into your work? Because I feel like that could be the most frustrating thing, just from the little bit I've talked with some PTs before. And you were an athlete too, and Asha, you're an athlete, and still pretty more active than I am. But I think that that's such an interesting aspect of, some people don't have the higher tolerance, some people have a super high tolerance. How does that play into your work? I think I'm not sure how much it has to do with perseverance, but we got to ask the question.
No, it is the oldest form of perseverance, right? Pushing through the pain. But I think it's very funny, because I will tell you, the majority of people walk in and they tell me they have a high pain tolerance. And I'm sorry, how do any of us know that? Like, you've never experienced someone else's pain. I just think it's funny. And then I had a guy once that he said, the first day he said, I don't have a very high pain tolerance. And I was like, oh, that's refreshing. Everyone thinks they have one. And he's like, oh, well, I've actually been shot twice and it hurt really bad. I didn't handle it well. So like,
oh my God.
I don't know if that means you have a low pain tolerance. I think you're just normal. It's like, what? So it's very relative, right? So, and then, but I do think that there's, even within it always being personal to the person, there is a spectrum of like, sometimes it's like hard for me to be like, come on, this doesn't hurt that bad. Like, I want to say that. And I'm like, no, this is, they're experiencing it. Just like, I can't play that. I can't say pain is relative. You don't know what anyone else is feeling. And then put my perspective of their pain on them, So it is a balance. But when you see people that have had the same thing happen to them, and the differences between the pain, it is really interesting. We'll have like, so like a knee replacement. So we see a whole range of people that get those done. So we'll have like a guy, let's say a guy in his 50s, and then we have this lady in her 80s. And the guy in his 50s is almost always going to have a harder time than the lady in her 80s. And there's things that are different, physiologically as well. But then they usually get mad because they're like, look at that little old lady who's doing all of this. And, that goes back into, watching other people. But it is something I have to keep in mind all the time. And I'm also always telling people that it's an individual journey. You feel your pain. Pain is a limiting factor. Some people are able to push through more pain than others, but I never will truly be able to know what that pain feels like. I do check people sometimes when they're telling me they're a 10 out of 10 pain with a smile on their face. And I'm like, oh, we should bring out the little kid chart where that's like the crying face. It's obviously not a 10 out of 10 pain right now. But it's a balance for sure. Everybody's different.
Yeah. Oh, that's what comes to mind for me with that. I think it's funny. I can go back my 4 big rugby injuries, and it's funny because I remember telling the doctors after each one, oh, that was a 10. And then I had something way worse happen the next year. I was like, oh wait, no, this one was a 10. That was nothing. And then it just kept going and going and going up like that. So yeah, it's definitely a relative thing that's interesting. And I think that the other side of that, to kind of bring it out of the PT space, is that I think that there's lots of different types of pain out there. And I think that's true for not just physical pain, that, when we talk about overcoming obstacles along the journey to success and things like that, there's all sorts of different barriers, and those things are painful. Like, it's Ashi and I've had these talks about business and things. When you leave a business that you started, that is a very painful experience to go through, and those type of things are relative too, which is the really interesting thing. If you're the young entrepreneur like myself, and you close down a business, like, that is the biggest loss, one of the biggest losses you've had in your life. This is a huge thing that you worked on for years, and it's just gone. And then you talk to an older entrepreneur, somebody who's been through it, and they just go, oh yeah, that'll happen. Because they've had 50 businesses that are failed. And it's like, that's happened to them so many times. Pain is relative. They're like, no, you'll get over that. You'll get over that. But it's like, no, this is my first one. It's a lot. And so I think that's an interesting aspect there. And then Ashi, I'll throw it over to you. How do you coach that type of thing? How do you coach people out of that pain and not focusing on that pain? And feel free to take that example or use another one.
Honestly, well, we will stick with that one because it is something that is always relevant, right? I mean, everybody knows the statistics. I do not need to repeat the scary, big bad statistics about businesses failing and how many fail within the first year or the first few years due to a number of things: lack of capital, lack of human resources. A combination of both is what I see most constantly. And when they're stepping out, I always say, look, first of all, once again, don't push that away. You are actually mourning a death. I know some people will be laughing about that, but once again, it goes back to you not having those experiences of the blood, sweat, tears, you putting in the effort, the strategic planning, the endless nights, the days, the other quote unquote opportunities of a different life. I mean, that's something that comes up every single time they're thinking about, okay, could I have redirected or reused that time to be doing something else? Maybe I should have done the standard, using the air quotes, 9 to 5. Where would I be? Would I be managing? Would I be at C-suite? Where would I be if I had taken, the road not taken and the path not taken, right? But for me, I say, look, one, this is going to come as a biting the bullet moment that you might just have to swallow hard, but it's the hardest thing. Growing is the hardest thing. It is the most difficult thing you will ever face. Okay. You will be dealing with, okay, the what if. It's like literally a relationship. What if? What have I done this? What have I done that? Right. And you have to just, once again, get it through your system. You have to express it. You have to go through that mourning process, but you also have to think about, what did I learn? What can I take away from it? I mean, you have the serial entrepreneurs. I mean, you're talking to one right now. You think Pivotal Solutions was an instantaneous success? No. Okay. I have to say, you have to be consistent. You're already there. You're already in it. Now it comes back to flipping that switch on and just being the star and coming to play in the universe, as I like to call it. All right. You're already having that gift. You're already there, but you have to be consistent and the universe will reward you. Okay. You can't just have, it doesn't matter the size of the goal. You have to show up every day. And these people showed up every day, and it's just devastating. And I promise you what will happen is, and this is a pretty unique perspective. People think I'm kind of hippy dippy Zen guru when I talk like this, but I promise you, what you really think you want and what you really think you need, you have Miss Universe saying, oh, is that what you think is going on here? Well, let me provide you with what you really want and what you really need. And in order for me to do that, I have to clear some stuff off your plate. This hit part of your direction and part of your fulfillment. I talk to a lot of my friends and they say, well, what's your ultimate dream? And I say, look, I come from an Indian background, and we have the alignment of the chakras, right? And people call me the goddess of love and light and a global leader of the love economy. And basically it's the approach of, I am that guiding moment to inspire you, to help you get what you want, get where you want to go. But at the end of the day, it's, for me, it's about you being proud of who you are, where you come from, and your story be told. All right. And every single thing I do is manifested through this one principle. Everything I am, everything I'm involved with. How did I get there? Oh gosh. Some of it I already knew. Some of it had to be yanked out, and some of it was failure. No joke. I mean, I've had days where I've just been, I mean, Camden, you've been a part of this, where I'm just literally crying. And I'm not a crier, okay, people? I do not do a lot of crying. And I've been sobbing. And I'm like, I just need someone to tell me things are going to be fine. But I've got to believe it myself. And what ends up happening is when people know it's not right, they feel it, they knew it, they were just hoping they could keep on going. And it was use of their perseverance and tenacity, but need to be redirected. And then when it goes away, they're like, oh man, that didn't feel right. I didn't course correct, but this is what I'm interested in. This is what I really want to do, right? For me, being that shining light in that moment where all you have to do is close your eyes and feel my energy and my gifts coming to you saying, you've got this, right? It's a fearsome thing to behold. And that's the thing. People run from it. They run scared. And when we have situations where you're facing that, that's that pivotal, yes, I'm using that term here, guys. That's that pivotal crossroads moment where it's that critical moment where either you stay comfy or you get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And I find a lot of people just, because sometimes it's turning down the multi 6-figure job, the 401k, the benefits, the comfiness, or it's the practical of, I do have dependents, I do have children, I do have a mortgage. The material side also comes to play. But you have to, and this is the number one piece of advice I will say in this roadmap, is one, let yourself feel it, process it, write everything down, use voice memos, get it out. It'll make a great book one day. I promise. Been there, done that. International bestseller. It works. Number 3, think about what you want and what you need. Think about your gifts. What are your negotiables? What are your mandates? Think about what the gift of you is. That's right. Another Ashiism for you, the gift of you, working on a television show about that right now. And then transform. You are the house of transformation. You transform, use those gifts. You're already ready. You're already there. Flip that switch and get in it. And do not let one failure, I know it's easy for me to say that sitting from where I'm sitting, but I promise you, I'm a living, breathing example of it does happen. You got to stick with it if that's what you want to do. But the only person who can make that choice is you.
You know, I love it. One interesting thing you kind of touched on there, Aussie. Wow, that's the first time that's happened. We've been talking all the time. That's the first time I messed up your name. Wow, that's a record. I think I usually mess it up a lot faster. But we'll work on that. But one of the things you touched on is like kind of the downside of perseverance. You know, what if to use the grit example, it's like what happens if you have too much grit and you never quit that dead end job and you just keep trying to grit your way out of it. And what that reminds me of immediately for you, Ciarra, is good pain, bad pain. And we've had this conversation probably about 10 times since I first hurt my back. There's and maybe you could put it into more scientific terms than I can with good pain and bad pain. But what I'm talking about here is when you have, even if you have high pay tolerance or not, when you're going through recovery of things, there's pain that is coming. And it's like, look, in order to do certain things, like with my sciatica, the nerve flossing, that's super painful, but it's not something that's like hurting me. It's just painful. It's good pain because you're pushing, you want to push through it. It's the stuff that means it's working. And then you have the bad pain, which is where you do something that you shouldn't have pushed through and you had a little bit too much perseverance that day and you wind up pushing through something and it messes you up and you wind up going backwards on it. So I think it'll be an interesting thing for you to talk on for a second there, Ciarra.
Yeah. So, it's your classic eustress, distress, right? So it's the same with their bodies physically as it is mentally. There is discomfort. I mean, and there's things, you know, you describe as pain, but a lot of my job is educating people on what is good pain and what is bad pain. We are constantly telling people that the classic adage that our father uses a lot of no pain, no gain is not really accurate. You know, there's times when there's pain, but when you're using the no pain, no gain in like a sports training sense, we're talking like muscles working, right? Like you're pushing through that. If like you've now torn a ligament, like that's not doing you any good anymore,
right?
To keep pushing through that, physiologically. So a lot of it is trying to find out, you know, I'm always trying to get people to describe what they're feeling, you know, using really specific descriptor words so that I can help them decide, is that good pain or bad pain? And I think that, and what you guys were talking about, and the thing that's the same in both of these industries is that sometimes you need someone else's perspective or to tell you when you're persevering through good things and when you're persevering through bad things. Because like you said, to someone who's stuck at that job that they're not, you know, having any growth or whatever, but they're sticking it out and they see that as like, you know, they're persevering that. But when there's a good opportunity elsewhere, sometimes you need someone to kind of snap you out of it and to tell you, give you that perspective, because you're so focused, which can be a good thing, right? But you know, that's the whole point of, you know, that's half of my job, it's half of your job, is to be that person to tell people like, here's how I'm seeing it. You know, this is, you know, you're in it, so maybe you can't see this other side of it. You know, I'm not experiencing that, but this is how it looks from my perspective. And maybe if we tried this, that you could really have some good outcomes. So, and that kind of ties into like me earlier, that's when I'll a lot of times tell people to take a break, have a true rest day. And I'll ask them to take a rest day and they'll be like, well, which exercises should I do on my rest day? I'm like, no, like that's not,
Stop.
you know, like try, or maybe just go on a walk, you know. Sometimes we need that. So, you know, we need other people to tell us, you know, what we're looking at, you know, to help us see it from a different perspective. Is it eustress or distress? You know, there has to be pressure, there has to be stress in our lives to see change. You know, the only way we build muscle is through truly pushing it, right? Our bones get stronger through pressure. We have to challenge ourselves to grow. You know, that's what you hear all the time in, you know, mental health stuff too, but it's true. Like physically, if you never challenge yourself, your body will continue to, you know, degrade. You have to work hard to improve. And so it's like we have these classic things that people hear all the time, but the fact of the matter is they're classic for a reason. They're true just at the basis of literally how our body functions. And you can just take those lessons and apply them to other areas of your life.
Yeah, they're cliches for a reason, right?
Yeah.
Well, the last question I had for you was, I'm thinking more about the team sense of how you're working, and so not just the patients, because I think we beat that dead horse plenty. But sorry, that's a little rough one. But the what I want to talk about more is the teaching of perseverance through the physical therapy team more so. And I guess the preclusion to that is maybe all PT techs are super nice people that just want to help people persevere, and that's why that they chose that job. But I have a gut feeling that that's probably a handful of people, but not everyone. So do you wind up having to kind of teach this philosophy of, you know, perseverance, and teach them how to use perseverance to help people through their injuries, as far as teaching the techs, I mean?
Yeah, that's very big part of the job. So for people who don't know, like what a PT tech is, so a PT tech is someone who doesn't really have any necessarily skilled training. So they're coming in. Most techs are actually people who want to go to PT school. So they're there to get hours, because in order to apply to PT school, you need hundreds of hours of experience in the field. So they usually are young and they haven't really done a lot. A lot of times they're like athletes and things like that. And so, yeah, we do have to teach them how to talk to the patients, how to encourage patients. So, you know, they a lot of times will help like a patient do an exercise or something that we've prescribed. And so they're, you know, chatting with the patient a lot. And so patients will often ask them questions and ask, you know, they're looking for that reassurance from another person. And so, yes, we have to, try to teach them how to speak to a patient. It's something that we're taught in school, in PT school. I mean, there's a lot of global health and mental health in our curriculums to try to help, prepare us for dealing with that. Me personally, I double majored kinesiology and psychology, so I love all of that stuff.
Cool. Great.
But there's a lot of psych in what we do, right? It's really important, and so it's part of our schooling as well, is to try to, teach people to find that within themselves, find that power within themselves to get through it. You have to be, like I said earlier, you have to be prepared to shift what you thought we were going to do. Like what I thought the plan was going to be that day, it may not happen, because they may be having a really bad day, and it may just be a day that they just tell me what's going on in their lives. And
that happens. Yeah, no, I'm sorry to interrupt, but no, it's the same thing with us too. I mean, you come in and we're talking about strategic planning, or once again, making progress towards that ultimate goal. And I mean, this just happened yesterday with a client of mine, complete DEFCON 1 meltdown. I mean, we're going to be talking about her staffing and a few other situations. She comes in, she's talking about a situation involving her being involved with a grant and accepting a grant. I mean, this is over a $2.5 million grant, and it's coming from a place up north, and this place has ties to the Ku Klux Klan. And this woman is a Black woman in agriculture, and she had no idea. She got told it came from oil, and about 80% of the grant's coming from oil, and 20% is coming from direct funding from the modern day Ku Klux Klan, which is a social enterprise, right? It's a social campaign. She was like, oh my gosh, I had plans for this money and for these farmers over here. And she just said, I've already signed the paperwork and
oh my God,
all kinds of stuff. And with her family history with the Klan, I mean, there were some interactions for sure with her grandparents. She was like, no. And I'm like, okay, so here's the thing. She was like, gosh, did I do my due diligence? Did I just do what I need to do? What did I do? And I said, well, let me look into this for you. And I mean, even I had to pull out layers. I mean, it was worse than an onion. I mean, it was like, there is no way you were going to be able to figure this out. I even had to call a couple of people in DC and a few other people, I mean, to get the real story and legitimacy of how much, the percentages, the numbers, and it just threw her off. And, after that day, I mean, here's the final question I have for you, good doctor, is that when you have a bad day like that, and you guys, are like, we'll have a better day tomorrow, or we'll have a better day next time. How do you help them when they go home? Because they're going to be thinking about it. They're going to be sitting with it. So what do you do to help them when they're not in that, dare I say, safe environment with you, and they're vulnerable at home?
So there isn't a lot that I can do other than prepare them, to try to give them tools for how to handle things at home. We do a lot of teaching people relaxation techniques, because that's a big component of healing as well, is that, when you have that physical pain, it causes mental stress, mental duress, and vice versa a lot of times. And so that's one of the ways that I try to help prepare people, is to try to work on their, diaphragmatic breathing, deep breathing techniques, self-massage, things that they can do to take care of themselves that will help, bring just that high level of stress, just bring it down so that they can heal. So that's one of the ways that we really try to do that. Try to encourage them to, find exercise outlets that are safe for them, because exercise helps us deal with all of that stuff as well. So that's really our best tool for dealing with things at home. I think a lot of times the reason people come in and they have these bad days is because, we as the PT, we're the only person that they can talk to that's not involved in whatever they're dealing with at home. And so, sometimes it's, for quite a few people, it's enough to just come and dump it out, right? And they feel better having gotten to talk about it, and then they can take that relief, and at least it'll last them a little bit longer, until the next time they can come in. But yeah, I would say as far as things that I have the, the tools to help them with, it's definitely that like relaxation techniques, trying to bring it back, be calm, try to focus on the things you can control. That's one of the main things that we would tell people, try to focus on the things that you actually can influence and work on those and focus on that, and try not to let those big scary things that are out of our control, weigh on you too much.
Oh,
and I
wow.
always give them my email address so they can reach out in between.
That extra layer, I like it.
I love the teaching component there, just as kind of a closing thought to put the bow on everything, because that's something that I think a lot of people might not understand. And I frankly, I hadn't thought about it in your work that way. But you can't coach somebody all the time. Whether it's business coaching, the rugby example is perfect. I always draw the comparison, football coach versus rugby coach. Football coach gets to outline and script every single thing that happens throughout the 60-minute game. A rugby coach gets to say one thing at the beginning, and you get to say one thing at halftime. And besides that, the game is just going. And so when I talk about that, especially in terms like the business coaching and things, it's you have to teach your players the tools they need to make decisions when you aren't there, because you can't make the decisions for them. It's all about recognizing the reality of your situation, that you will not always be there for them, and that you need to give them the tools that they need to move forward with that. And the same type of thing goes at business coaching. I'm sure you'll agree with me, Ashi. Oh, there you go, nodding. That, you're not always going to be there to coach somebody, and you have to give them the tools to combat that negativity or combat those feelings, whatever is happening there, to prevent those negative spirals. And if they don't have the tools, or if you're the helicopter coach who wants to be there every time it's happening, then they can never perform on their own. And when you're not there, things are going to completely fall apart. So I think the teaching component there is a huge takeaway from this. And I think, that might be one of those universal truths going around the more people I talk to in different professions.
Yeah, I always tell people that, so it's funny that you just said that, but I don't feel that my job is to make them better. My job is to empower them to make themselves better. I mean, that's what it boils down to, right? And I think that's the difference between my profession and some other doctoring professions out there. But that's my job is and if they don't take that and they don't do that, then then a lot of times they're not going to be successful in improving stuff. But so I was like, wow, that's like exactly what I say.
That's great. I tell my guys, I think it's awesome, because I tell them, look, this is a bad business model for me, but my job is to make sure you don't need me. Right. And then they look at me, you get these double takes. You're like, excuse me, what does that even mean? But I like the idea of, for me, it's just reminding them that they've got the power. You never lost it. You never lost your confidence. You never lost any of these things. Let's pull them out and let them play. Right, with you. So much fun.
Great.
Big bow.
Oh, great. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Ciarra. I think we're just about running out of time. This has been an amazing episode. Thank you so much. Wish Otis was here for it. Maybe we'll have to get all four of us on one, and we can run it back on some more perseverance and talking physical therapy and all that kind of stuff, because you had a lot of lessons. I really enjoyed this. I'll be honest, it was one of those gut instincts when I texted you earlier this week, and I was like, I want to have you on the show, and gosh, gut instincts are good sometimes. So I'll have to start trusting my gut more. But I have all of the power because Otis is not here. So I can ask what you guys learned first and save mine towards the end. So Ashi, what did you learn today?
One, I learned that Miss Ciarra is just absolutely brilliant. Not that I had any doubt whatsoever, but it just added extra brilliance. But I loved how she put emphasis on bedside care and bedside manner, because growing up in a family of physicians and whatnot, it's been something that I know a great deal about, but I've also witnessed those in the medical industry forget, or once again, their intentions are something else. But it's really always great to be reminded of the parallels, because what we are doing in this circle, this universe of particular folks, it goes back to healing, it goes back to confidence and growth. And I love the fact that once again there was a reminder of parallels of what we do in some ways is the same. So that was really neat. It's like, yay. So that's me, Camden.
Ciarra, what did you learn today?
Well, I mean, it kind of very similar, but I feel that I learned that, that there's so many similarities here. That's what I was going to say is that, when you did ask me to do this, I was like, okay, like I can talk about that with, people getting through tough times and all that. I mean, that's
Mhm.
today for me. But all the things that you brought up, both of you, it's like, now that's like, oh, we do, we do pretty much the same thing in a different setting. And I
Mhm.
think that's really cool that the idea of, coaching is so universal and that, we could have the opportunity to help people and that people have that available to them
Mhm.
as well in so many different realms of life because sometimes we just need help.
Well, if you need a career change, I think you've got the tools to shift into business coaching later on in life. You can come join us over at Tribe and Purpose. I know you got the Batterton last name now, but we can let you in on the McGregor side. It's all right.
Okay.
But what I learned today is, in addition to what you guys have been saying, the one of the things you said, Ciarra, that stuck with me was, why would you stick with something that isn't meaningful to you? And I love that when we're talking about perseverance. I've got a full page of notes of a lot of things you said, but that's the one that really stuck with me, is why would you stick with something that isn't meaningful to you? So folks, if something isn't meaningful to you, if it doesn't excite you, then don't stick with it. Bite the bullet. The sunk costs don't matter, and just move along, right? Great. Well, see, this is the part where Otis says, Cam, walk us out, and it's not awkward, but it's going to be awkward this week, so we're dealing with that. But thank you all for listening to today's show. Special thanks to our guest, Dr. Ciarra Batterton, and our sponsors, Tribe and Purpose. Find your purpose, build your tribe. You can check out recent episodes of the Cam and Otis Show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts, and check out a full archive at thecamandotishow.buzzsprout.com. The Cam and Otis Show is on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Thanks again, and we'll see y'all next week.